to the implementation and proposal portion of the information session videos presented by A Stronger Foundation. I'm Dr. Small. In the first video, I will apply details shared in the previous videos to emphasize their contributions to the education problems that exist. Then, in the second video, I will present a proposal as a possible solution to the education problem that also entails an ethical learning opportunity for every child. In a moment, you will watch a previously recorded video that sufficiently describes the present elements limiting students' achievements. The notes mentioned in the video are presented on the screen. Let's begin. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me for this follow-up video message. I take it that you have reviewed the initial video message and read the letter, and you're interested, you'd like to learn more, and I am honored. Thank you so much. So if you're watching this video, you also have notes that goes along with this video so that I can stay on track and just respect your time. And in a few minutes, we'll look at the notes. It goes back and forth. I'll just let you know that I'm still here while looking over our notes together. I want you to know I am aware of our audience. I'm fully aware of the audience, that it's a broad audience. It consists of direct school administrators. It consists of youth education entities, consists of community business owners, and the commonality among all of the audience is that we're all leaders, we're stakeholders in our community, and we have responsibility for the success of this community. And the first part in that is helping to guide our children and our youth in a way that will sustain the well-being of our community. So we're going to begin by looking at some of the local school data, just to give us that platform which we will be speaking on. So what I'm going to do is take you to a couple of our schools, show you how to check their data. And again, so that while we're speaking here, you can understand the references. And so I'll take you first to one of our lower performing schools, receiving a school grade of C. And we want to take a look at the data. And this is the total students. We're looking here, total students. That means race doesn't matter, economic disparity doesn't matter. It's just all the students attending this school right now. I'll make sure I have the correct and most up-to-date data here. And you can see in this school, first of all, let me go down to the little chart below so you see the key, and you realize that this copper color represents 1, this level 2 is more yellow, and level 3 is green, 4 is that aqua color and that darker blue, right? So that you can follow the data. And then this chart, and this for people who are not direct administrators, like I explained before, we have a broad audience that listens here. And so what we have is they're comparing this particular school, which I was trying to keep private, but they're comparing the school data to the district data here to the state's data here. Now, if you look at this particular school, and I did clearly say it's one of the lower performing schools in our communities, and level 1, you have 45% of the children scoring at a level 1 on their assessment. You have 27% scoring at a level 2. When you combine that data, you can see the percentage of students who are performing between a level 1 and 2. And if you combine the 3, you can see it's a very large percentage of the children who are going to be tomorrow's leaders. So that's a very, very serious situation. And as I've already said, this is the data, not just for this particular school that I was trying to protect again, but it is the common data for many schools across our county, which I'm happy to show you at the time if you invite me in for a meeting, right? So what we'll do now is, in most cases, I'd be able then to go ahead and show you the difference in the data based on the race. However, because this particular school, the majority of this school happens, the race is Black and Hispanic, then the data basically all students represents and includes all of those students as well. So I'm happy to still do it, but again, we'll take a look and see that the data is very, very similar. And as previously stated, we see that the data looks almost identical because again, because of the majority of the population of that school, there's not much difference or discrepancy, as you will see when we look at a more affluent area where there will be a clear distinction between the different classes of students. And I will be making my point shortly. All right, so at this point now, we're going to go on back and we're going to take a look at one of the more affluent schools where you have the area, the neighborhood is just more diverse. All right, so here we're looking at Palm Beach County. That's the school, that's the county we're interested in. And then we're going to go to, we could do Binks is out there or Elbridge Gales. We'll do Elbridge Gales Elementary School. And I do want to say that the data for secondary education is extremely similar because these are the schools that feed directly into those secondary schools and the gaps remain, and you can continue to see the discrepancy and the low performance as the child or students enter those secondary learning environments. And we're going to go directly here, just looking at the academic achievements. Here below. And now we're looking at total students. And I am going to go ahead and view the chart again to make sure, again, we have the most dated data. So what this shows us here is that this school where, again, it's a more fluent neighborhood, more diversity. You have parents who are more engaged in the learning or just willing to get the child extracurricular help so that they can do better. So let's look at our data. Here we have about 50%, okay? If you combine the 25 and the 30, we could give them approximately 50. It looks more like a 45. Actually, I'm sorry, looks more like 55, which is good. 55 is good. However, we will talk about that in a minute, okay? Look at the data below at the children who are scoring at or below the proficiency level, which is 3. Okay, add those up, you see the total of children, the total students were scoring at or below level 3. All right, and again, this data looks a little better for this school and the type of schools that show similar data. It's 55%, right? It's looking pretty good. So let's go on now, and we're going to go ahead and subgroup. We're going to look at the African-American children again in this area. And I do want to remind you again, because it is a more affluent area, the data is not going to look as dire as it did in another area where there were economic challenges for those children. Okay, so now when you look at just the Black children or the minority group, we're at 30 plus 20. That's about a 50%. So see, they're clearly doing pretty good compared to the data we looked at before for another school. So now I can make my point to you. Okay, so first of all, both schools, the lower performing and the higher performing, they're both going to be entering a future one day. So my concern here is even though the higher performing school looks better, okay, and it makes us a little happier, the truth is the highest that we saw was 55% that were scoring above the proficiency level, above a level 4 or 5. So even though that's good, my argument is that I feel like that should be considered the low performance. I mean, we're right at the 50% border, right at the 55%. I feel like that should be considered, even if it was 60%, that's the low performing. Why? Well, see, my concern is the future implication for our children. It's not about whether our children will be embarrassed that they have low grades. It's not about our state or our county or school district being embarrassed that we have children performing low. So, of course, embarrassment would be warranted, but there's a deeper, more ethical situation here that we're facing. We're looking at children who are unprepared to enter their future life where it really counts. You see, honor roll is important and it's exciting and celebratory to get great grades, to get on the principal honor roll, to make the dean's list. But we all know, we as the community advocates and the leaders and the stakeholders, that there's a real life that's waiting for our children. And whether or not they get a bronze or a gold medal around their necks, whether they're graduating the top 5%, there's a life that's waiting for them. And while I'm there, we all know that education alone enough is not enough. Education alone is not enough to help our children to live a fulfilling and meaningful life, void of severe economic disparities. We understand they also need mindset. They need to develop their ability to be motivated, to have that drive, to have that determination. And so that is the deeper concern. So again, while school 2, the higher performing school, seems to be doing great, that's based on a comparison to the schools that are doing so much worse. We cannot allow this to continue. My vision, my mission, and my vision, that high performing school is the lower, and that lower performing school is the higher performing school. That should be our base data. Our base data, the lowest should be 70%. And as you can see, our higher performing school is coming in right about 55%, and they're considered a high performing school. Why is this a problem? These children are getting ready to enter our future, and they're unprepared. Here's the major concern. Now, even though they're at a 60%, let's just give it 60%, right? As they graduate from high school and they enter the future, see, years ago, you and I were able to go into those middle class position, those jobs. You know, you worked hard as a cashier anywhere, or as a stalker anywhere, or you know, you go to a car dealership and you sell cars. You know, all of those were okay to keep us in the middle class and keep us surviving properly, or adequately, I should say. But now we know, without being political, we know that AI is a real thing, and the AI technology is rigorously replacing the jobs of the middle class. And as you go into the department stores, you now see computers rolling around the stores, taking inventory. That used to be a middle class job. You see computers sweeping the floor or just greeting customers. They're replaced in the middle class. So we need to fight for our youth. And again, I know you're used to hearing messages about how to get better grades, how to fix the children's grades just so that they can graduate. But this video is asking you to please consider with me the future implications of our low performing education system. I like to say up front, I am fully in support of our school system, the state, the district, down to the school administrators, the educators, the curriculum. I support it all. And I believe teachers are doing a fantastic job. And I don't believe the problem is with the children. I don't believe the problem is with the educators. I don't believe it's with the curriculum. I believe the problem has a deeper source, and I'm going to address it. And thank you so much for allowing that introduction. And with that, I really would like to move into the approach that I have for our children. It's going to discuss the problem, of course, but also a very viable recourse to take to transform the degree of failure that we're seeing across our county, one school at a time, one community at a time. We can make the change so that our children can grow up to be successful, live a prosperous, meaningful, and fulfilling life. And remember, that doesn't mean we're trying to get them rich. It just means we're trying to get them to the point where they don't come face to face with disaster and they realize, oh my gosh, I'm not equipped to even survive in my life. All right. It'll benefit all of us as a whole, all of our stakeholders, all of us leaders, all of us community advocates, right? It's going to be a win-win. So again, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm going to go ahead to the notes you have in front of you, and we're going to go from there. Thank you so much. Let's go. Before you, I have what is called the proposal. This is our proposal to help to correct the errors that we have here in learning and instructing our children to be competent and to reverse the data. It says we must orient our students with learning. It says okay, look with me here. This is our vision outline. We are a stronger foundation. And this is our plan, academic restoration plan to restore education to the benefit it once was. Our mission is to design a life plan for every child in Palm Beach County. Yes, a life plan. Our vision: children embrace education as an essential life source. And our goal is to establish partnerships and connections to further this mission. The problem we are having in our education system is that our children are failing. From observation, we see that there is no real learning plan for children. And the current response to this are ineffective methods. Methods that are being implemented are ineffective, and we see that in the continuous low performance of our children. Back to the problem. Based on the district, states, and national data as we have viewed, we see evidence of low test results. We see evidence of children not meeting the standards. We do see that there is no explicit learning plan. We see that whatever learning plan is in position, it is inconsistent and it is unregulated. And finally, we see that the character building efforts, which is the balance between education and mindset, we see that those efforts are also ineffective. I'll go back and address the learning plan because I know educators are saying, hey, what is she talking about? Of course, we have learning plans. Yes, we have learning plans. However, those plans that are in place, they are not properly regulated. And if they were, we would still see the change, and the same change that I am proposing would be evident. Again, I believe our school system has a beautiful approach. However, the problem is that there is inconsistency and it is not properly regulated. Back to observation. When we look and observe students in grades K through 2, we see that there is low rigor. For some reason, the curriculum slows down for children in second grade, and the rigor is low, much lower than these children can accommodate. And because of this low rigor in a time when the children were really ready to embrace a rigorous learning episode, this allows the critical gap to develop. This is the area where the major critical gap develops that determines the scores that we have viewed. Why is that the case? Well, according to educational research and psychologists, we learn about the concept of the window of opportunity. And the window of opportunity is really just a period in time when the young brain, is able to accommodate a vast degree of intense instruction. Dr. David Sosa, author of How the Brain Learns, describes the window of opportunity as an important period when the young brain is highly susceptible to certain types of input. Once this critical window tapers off, the brain cells assigned to those tasks may be pruned off or recruited for other tasks. And so you can clearly see why this period is so very important. Now, if I had to combine this idea from Dr. David Sosa with what Erik Erikson says in his stages of development and Piaget discuss about the most optimal time for learning, then we would see a consistency in their statements and in their theories. Now, as we move on to observation for grades 3 to 5, You see, the consequence of not taking advantage of the window of opportunity while the child was so very ready is that now in grade 3, we see children who are stagnant academically, stagnant, not really making new progress. You see, we would have caught it in grades K through 2 if we paid close enough attention that they were making progress, but not sufficient progress. So when you got to grade 3 through 5, you realize the problem, they've stopped moving. What we also see is a shift in learning. We also see a shift in learning. The enthusiasm that was present back in kindergarten is missing. It's gone. It's changed. It's shifted. And the gap continues to widen. It gets wider, faster as the teachers continue in grades 3 through 5 to introduce new learning concepts for which the foundation is not there. And again, this is the period where you have the critical gap development, the shift in learning, the enthusiasm is gone as the gap continued to widen faster. Officially, what I've observed in my studies is the great misalignment with secondary success. What this means is that a child that is a victim of this low rigor, of the critical gap, of the shift in learning, of this wide gap, is now completely misaligned with secondary success. So it's not surprising when you look at the data from the schools that we observed, and if you look at the proposed height achieving school, you will see that those students continue to do pretty well. But then when you look at the graduation rate, they didn't exactly make it in the top 10% necessarily, because it just levels out after a time. What you begin to see is that even the children who scored levels 4 and 5, they did so because at this level, the curriculum tends to only test specific skills. Doesn't test every single skill. Certain skills are tested, and you have children who are better test takers. So they may look better on that paper, on that data, levels 4 and 5. However, once they get into secondary and the learning curriculum shift to subject-based, you begin to see the wide academic disparity in those children that once scored 4s and 5. Remember, all of this conversation is data-based. So now that we're misaligned with secondary success and we're entering middle school, now what you begin to see is less view on education and more view on different elements. First of all, when you have a low performance student who's not doing well, they know it. They know they're not doing well. They see other kids who are always getting 100% or 90% on their reading test. They realize it's not happening for them. Endorphins is that happy feeling. Kids now begin to go to school. They just want to be happy. They've already accepted, I'm not that great at reading. I can see that I stumble over my words. I see that I don't recognize most of my words. I read slowly. I'm not doing that great in math. I don't know my prerequisites. They don't realize that word, of course, but they realize that something is off. So now the learning shift, where when they were in kindergarten, it was they couldn't get enough of school. They couldn't get enough of that new learning and knowledge. Now you have a child up here, fourth, fifth grade, and they just want to be happy. They're at the state now where they're understanding, that's not who I am. I'm not that strong. They begin to internalize this. So now they just want to be happy. So what do I need to do? I'm coming to school. I'm not that great at learning. Maybe I can be great at making friends. Maybe I can just be great at the social aspects of school. Maybe I can just be great at making fun of other kids so I look strong at something. Maybe I can just be the best at, trying different substance that are brought to me at school. And, we have to understand we're talking about fluent areas, but also the poor areas where this conversation is very, very potent. Maybe I'll just smoke something, and so the kids will know that I'm cool. Maybe I'll just convince my parents to get me the coolest clothes, and the shoes, so that when I get an F or a predicted level 1 and 2, the kids still see me as a champion, as a star. Yeah, he's failing, but look how cool he is. And so it's all about those endorphins now, what's going to make them feel good, because we're human beings. And as human beings, we need to feel good about ourselves. So whatever it takes for us to feel good about ourselves, that's what we have to embrace. And that's what children do. Okay, they're not adults yet, they're still children. Then we look at the other element of entropy. Now, entropy is a term, and I'm coming back. Entropy is a term that is usually used in thermodynamics. And it basically says that things will fall apart. Okay? And that's a natural process for things to fall apart. And when I studied this concept back in school, in my doctoral program, I learned it as the example of a tree. And you can clearly see, especially during fall, how the leaves just begin to fall off the tree, right? And how does it make the ground look? Messy, right? It looks messy. And that's a natural process for things to fall apart, even in life. Constant curveball, things just coming, falling apart, okay? Cleaning it up takes an effort. That part takes an effort to clean it up. You will never see those leaves just coming back up off the ground and reattaching to the tree just so the surface can look clean. Instead, what we have are children in grade 5, and they're at a certain mindset when they realize they're about to cross over into middle school, and they know that they're not ready. They begin to go through a process of entropy where their little, I won't say life, but their ideas and of who they were and all the dreams they had back here when everything was new and bright and beautiful, they really just reached a milestone in their life, a fork, a crossing in their little life. And they know something is off. Something is not right. I'm not ready. So now between the endorphin, the need for just to be happy and contented with themselves, and everything falling apart, because what am I going to do? I clearly don't have what it takes to master middle school, and they know it. So the need for just to self-acceptance and just to be happy, then we're going to discuss the concept of the novelty-seeking brain. He said the novelty-seeking brain It's just the way our brains are naturally. Naturally, our brains always want new stimulation. It's just the way our brains are as human. We just need that constant stimulation. If you're sitting where you're sitting right now and someone knock at the door without any effort or conscious knowledge, your head will turn to see who is at that door. Just like that. And if there is an odor, smoke, or anything else, your attention, your distraction, your brain is going to automatically, you don't have to tell your brain to investigate the smell. You don't have to tell your brain to investigate the knock on the door. If there's a fire truck, you don't have to tell your brain to be curious what's going on down the street. It's automatic. And so we have a novelty-seeking brain that's always wanting stimulation. Okay, we have the registry. Now we're in a classroom and there is stimulation because there's a teacher talking, but that brain wants fresh, new sensory information that's interesting. And so what do our children begin to take on? Especially the ones, again, who are already struggling and they're in that state of entropy. They know, okay, I'm not great at this. Okay, let me just feel good about myself. What do I need to do to feel good about me? Right? Distractions. Either they become a classroom distractor or they have the phone. Okay, they need that constant stimulation. And that is what the educator is now up against, is a child who now is prioritizing the wrong stimuli. Okay, so what the brain tends to do, it will give higher priority to sensory input that has a greater interest to them. And lower priority to other input like education. I have to tell you, as adults, we're the same way. We have our interest that automatically grabs our attention. And then we have work that we have to put forth energy to become motivated for our work. Even when we're passionate about it, still, the tedious parts of it, our brain just wants to, do something that's more fun, greater stimulus. So let's look back at our notes. So to summarize, what I'm saying is during K through 2, learning stimulus are prioritized by the brain. However, as we enter 3rd through 5th and above, social elements are prioritized and the focus moves, or the priority moves away from learning. So educational data naturally have a lower priority for the brain. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because K through 2 is when the rigor was necessary. That's when the rigor was crucial, and it was critical to avoid the gaps that now exist, that's now contributing to this entropy, right? So again, the novelty-seeking brain conversation that we're having here, I'm not saying that it's dependent on what happens with K through 2. It's natural. The novelty-seeking brain is independent from anything. It's just that when a child is in K2, the greatest stimulus for a child is what happens with the preschool teacher and the kindergarten teacher. My son still remembers being rolled into a burrito by his preschool teacher. So, that was huge for them at that stage. Okay, so now moving forward, Let's take a look here. The response. Let's move on to response. And I did want to address what was meant in the mission statement where we said life plan. When I say life plan, we're talking about the most ethical, rich education that will help to navigate economic disparities as the children transition from school to real life, which by real life we mean an independent adult living. And when we talked about life source here, when I said children will embrace education as an essential life source, I feel like we have a huge responsibility just to get into children's head and let them know education is not just because we want you to be smart, or its sole purpose. It's a treatment, it's a training so that when they become an adult, and they will become an adult, that they'll be able not only to survive, because if it's just surviving, that is good, but we all know that survival is not good enough. When you step into real life and you start to look at your purpose, you're confronted with your purpose, the reason why you were created and placed on earth. When you start to realize, oh my goodness, I don't have what it takes, I'm not equipped to fulfill my purpose, that's huge. Okay, that takes on many terrible, severe implications like depression, anxiety, real anxiety, suicide levels that increase. It contributes to homelessness. People that's walking on the street and they're homeless, they didn't plan for it. It's not that they wanted it. They gave up. They lost hope. And when you lose hope, it's like losing your soul. And so for me, this is not a business. This is a mission. This is a person fulfilling their purpose. And I'm reaching out to you because I have to reach children to tell them this knowledge that education is a life source. The better your education is, the better you'll do in life. And yes, I do understand that you have educated homeless people. And that's why I preach a balance, because education alone is insufficient for living that meaningful life. I'm not talking about a life where you have enough money to do what you want to do. And there's a difference with people who are rich and even successful, and those who have meaning and fulfillment because they're satisfied. And that is priceless. And so what I preach is that balance. I teach that balance to children, that you need a strong education, but you also need a strong mindset. Because what's a strong education without a mindset? You won't have a drive. You won't have the motivation. You won't have the rigor. You won't be able to maximize that education unless you have a balanced mindset. And what is a strong mindset? You ever heard a person that's like, I can do anything. I'm going to achieve greatness. I'm going to conquer the world. But there's no education. Do you realize there has to be a balance? And that's why I'm fighting for our children, and I'm encouraging you to jump on board. Team up with me as a community, as advocates, as leaders of education. Let us win our generation, our youth, to save their life. And so current responses are ineffective. Yes, we have progress monitoring plans, but they just sit there. They're not explicitly addressed. And then we have the other method, for solution or response is isolated or random tutoring. Right? When the child dips really low, we start to do tutoring, but isolated tutoring does not work. Because if a child is struggling with fractions and you simply give an isolated tutoring sessions to help them to pass that test, but you didn't go back from where the problem began, where the critical gaps developed, that has been a waste of time and Title I funds because the child, it has not been properly learned, so it is not stored. And if it's not stored, it cannot be recalled. Right? Other responses, yes, we have the IEP, we have the ESA, we have the No Child Left Behind. I have yet to see a decent percent of children who actually makes it off their IEP. So it's a form where, yeah, all the problems are listed. How many times are the problems corrected? We have a lot of great laws out there, but those are distant. How are they helping our children to improve? How are they making that transition? So what we also did, a response is that we tried to accommodate with the digital resource. We said, okay, this is a digital generation. Let's just give them digitals. And basically what that did, it has crippled the children. What we have given them is that instant gratification. Yes, because we are, okay, so even education understand the novelty seeking brain concept. So they figure, okay, that's what the kids like. Let's give it to them, but it crippled them. Because from experience as a classroom educator, I watch the children and they know how to manipulate that digital element to the point where they're constantly getting the reward. Because see, the intention of the digital is that you study for a while, you do really well, and as a reward, there's a game at the end. There's that gratification, but they want it instant. So they have learned how to manipulate the program so that they skip through those lessons without passing them, really, to get to that game, that stimulant right there. Consequence of that response is that now we have children who are lethargic. Children don't want to pick up a book to read it. All right. These digital components have a key that the children press and it reads it to them. So now when you hand them a book to read, they're crippled. They're crippled. They don't want to read it or they don't know how to read it. So that's what that response has done to our children. The other response, even though we may not want to admit to it, is that we have lowered the bar. Yes, I often realize that concepts that we used to teach in third grade is now being taught at fifth grade level. We have lowered the bar and we have resorted to mental math tricks instead of really sticking to helping these children to reason through and to engage in critical thinking. And they lack the complexity of the mental math tricks. Problem is that they lack a complexity that is necessary for our children to engage in the critical thinking and again to be able to take that in the world, in their future, because all of this is about them being able to succeed in their future. And so I want to talk about apoptosis. The concept of apoptosis is that when we're born, we have a certain amount of cells that are attributed to a certain purpose. And if they're not used, they are slaughtered off. They are. And if you look deeper into science, you'll see how they're trying to learn how to save those cells that if we don't use them up here because we think the child cannot handle it, and so we have the low rigor, they're using science to save these cells so that they can use these cells for other functions like healing cancer or just dealing with other type of sickness and episodes. So the children at this stage, they begin to sense the self-destruct. They really do. They're in self-destruct mode and they start to compensate with stimulants, sex. When sixth graders having sex. Okay, again, I can't read well. I'm not that great at math. Okay, at least I can have fancy shoes, or at least I can have sex with people now. That makes me cool. Or I can pick on somebody else. I can bully them. I can start to smoke. Or I can just distract the class. I can keep this teacher from teaching any lesson. If I can't understand it, then nobody else will benefit from what this teacher is saying. Now we have the children that's in grade 3. Now we've entered grade 3. And in third grade is a pivotal academic year. And I am going to come back to you. And I am going to pause this video at this time. And I'm going to continue on a part 2. Because I know this has been a lot. However, we are going to continue on the next video. And also, I want to make sure that we do not lose this information and that it's not overwhelming. Thank you so much for your time. And I do ask that you will please continue along with me in part 2 of this video. Thank you so much. You've been great.